According to the Living Planet report of 2022, published by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, species populations have fallen by 69% between 1970 and 2018, and 1 million plants and animals are threatened with extinction. These statistics help to show the crisis biodiversity is facing today. For this presentation, biodiversity will be defined as the variation of plants and animals in the ecosystem. Now, this crisis impacts us in many ways, from limiting our food resources to simply slowly seeing the beauty of our ecosystem slip away from us. Now, in my field of study of wildlife conservation and ecology, this is prominent because this is one of the major things I'm studying, and hopefully I'll help to put an end to this crisis in my future career. But for today, we'll be talking about the different causes of the biodiversity crisis by looking at invasive species, overexploitation, and habitat loss. So first, we'll look at invasive species, which are species that were introduced to an ecosystem and cause harm to it. Now, these species can be introduced purposefully or accidentally. An example of a purposeful introduction is how the multicolored lady Asian beetle, which I am showing now, was introduced to the U.S. in the 1900s to help control different agricultural pests, but now can be seen all over the U.S. causing harm to different environments. And these species can also be introduced unintentionally by traveling on different human vessels, such as ships and planes. And these species cause harm to the environment by outcompeting and eating native species. In an article titled "Prominent Role of Invasive Species in Avian Biodiversity Loss," published in Biological Conservation in October of 2009, it states that bird families endemic to islands are historically at greater risk of extinction due to invasive species. An example of this is how the brown tree snake was introduced to Guam and is causing devastating losses to the native bird species there. Now that we see how adding individuals to the ecosystem can cause harm, I'll now talk about how taking away too many can be just as bad. And this is known as overexploitation, which is the unsustainable use of our resources, and in this case, the unsustainable use of our wildlife. In an article titled "Determining the Sustainability of Legal Wildlife Trade," published September 1st of 2023 in the Journal of Environmental Management, it's seen as, quote, "the second greatest threat to global diversity," end quote. And the first way we can see overexploitation is through wildlife trafficking. And the majority of animals that are trafficked are predators, such as lions and tigers, and they play a vital role with population control in their ecosystem. So when they're taken out of their habitat, it can cause an imbalance where some species may skyrocket in population while others may fall. Another way wildlife trafficking can cause harm is shown in an article published in Challenges in 2022 titled "Zoonotic Spillover in an Era of Rapid Deforestation of Tropical Areas and Unprecedented Wildlife Trafficking into the Wild," and how it talks about how wildlife trafficking raises the risk of disease spread from animals to humans. And this is shown with the coronavirus, how it was spread from an unknown animal to humans and caused this pandemic. Another way we can see overexploitation is through overhunting and overfishing. We can see this with tuna and how they have been overfished in the ocean, where some species of tuna are now threatened with extinction. And tuna is still being sold in our grocery stores to this day. Now, these are just a few examples of how overexploitation can cause harm to biodiversity, where there's so many more out there. But now that we see how taking too many individuals out of a habitat can cause harm, we'll now see how taking away the habitat altogether can cause even greater harm, because habitat destruction and fragmentation is seen as the number one threat to biodiversity today. Now, this happens all over the world, but the main areas of issues are in the tropics, especially areas like the Amazon. In an article titled "Predicting the Loss of Forest, Carbon Stakes, and Biodiversity Driven by a Neotropical Gold Rush," published in the Biological Conservation in October of 2023, it states that most habitat loss in the Amazon is due to the expansion of soy farms, cattle grazing, and gold mines. Now, habitat destruction is bad, but habitat fragmentation is also bad, even though it's not completely taking away the habitat. And this is because certain animals and certain wildlife need a bigger range than is being offered to them. And this is shown with the Florida panther, how they once had a great amount of individuals in their populations, but are now reduced to very few. And you can also see this in your local community through roadkill, because even though the road is a small split, it's still fragmented their habitat. But as you can see, with issues such as invasive species spread, overexploitation of our resources, and habitat loss and fragmentation, the threat to biodiversity becomes more evident as these issues continue to grow and become more severe. Hopefully, after this presentation, you'll understand the cause and why it's important for people to stay informed about issues such as the biodiversity crisis. Thank you.